name is Nicole Murray. I'm your midday host on 94.3 The Point, and with me today is writer, author, and musician Eric San Juan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I know you have quite a bit under your belt. So tell me a little bit, I guess, about some of the projects that you're most proud of, just to start off.
I came from a background in journalism. I quickly looked to roll that into writing books, and mostly got into doing film criticism and television criticism. So my first book was a book on the films of Alfred Hitchcock, and that sort of led me down the path to eventually writing about The Walking Dead.
Okay. Why was Walking Dead one of the series that you decided to dissect?
I mean, other than the fact that it's one of the hottest shows on TV, I thought that it was a show ripe with thematic matter that a lot of critics haven't jumped into. There's a lot of material to get into, and I haven't seen sort of the critical analysis that gives the show the depth that it deserves.
Okay, so I know we're not going to give everything away. We're not going to give all the goods away. But what kind of themes and everything do you dissect in the book? I know you say, this was genius to me, because The Walking Dead may be full of awesome zombie splatter, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have to have a brain. That's a genius line to me.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think, it's sort of break the book down by half seasons, because I think that the show has presented itself in that way, in these half season chunks. And the way I kind of look at it is that each half season represents a couple of core themes in each half season. And so you'll see talking about choices and consequences, the idea of the choices that we make as human beings and living with the consequences of those choices, or the idea of solitude and togetherness, and the sort of the contrast between those two things and how we need both of those things. The way those things conflict with one another, and yet the way those things are both necessary, especially in a world like The Walking Dead, where the dead are trying to eat you.
More or less. Here, let's take a look at this cover, because it's definitely very, very half zombie, half man. So do you delve into both sides of what, like, living versus dead? Is it mostly themes of just what the living have to go through?
It's really focused on the themes of what the living have to go to, and I think that's sort of part and parcel to the show. You know, as they say, we are the Walking Dead. The idea is that the title of the show doesn't really refer to the zombies and the living dead at all. It's the people who are living in that world. They are the Walking Dead. So this is the cover is supposed to sort of evoke the idea that Rick in particular, but all of these characters are always right on the cusp of losing their humanity. They're always walking that edge, which, as anyone who's been watching the show knows, that's perhaps the overarching theme of the entire show, is the idea that people put in dire circumstances will be forced to do horrible, immoral things in order to keep going and survive.
We definitely have seen that. So up to what season does this book dissect?
This show covers the first 5 seasons, as well as the origins of the show. So we talk a lot about the John Romero zombie movies. We talk about what zombies were before Romero created Night of the Living Dead, and that sort of thing. It cuts off just at the end of season 5 and the debut of Fear the Walking Dead.
Okay.
So my thought was that one of these days I would either expand this or do a second one that catches up on Fear the Walking Dead and the current seasons of the show.
I was just going to ask, so would you do Fear the Walking Dead and Walking Dead separately, or would that go in one book?
I think I would probably do them together at that time.
Okay, so speaking of, are you all caught up? Are you ready for season 8 coming up?
I'm actually not caught up. I am lagging behind most viewers. There's a good reason for that, or at least I feel like it's a good reason. It's because of the way I tend to watch, not only the way I tend to watch television, but for projects like this, I feel it's easier to spot the broader themes in these shows when you watch them together in a binge, as people say these days. So that's the way I tend to watch, especially if I have my eye on a project of this nature. I used to watch The Walking Dead week to week, just like everyone else does. And then when the seeds of this project were sort of planted in my head, I realized, okay, you know what? I need to refocus the way I'm taking in this show, because, like I said, it's much easier to spot, like, oh, you know what? This cluster of 8 episodes, there was really this overarching narrative theme here, and I might not have spotted it if I was on the edge of my seat every week, which is what the show's really all about, is every week making you go, oh, I can't believe they just did that to him. You know.
It's true. It's true. I think one of the biggest one was the cliffhanger on the end of season 6, I believe, was it?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes. So I think that was probably the most intense. So what have you seen up until then?
Since Lucille did what she did to our friend Glenn.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've heard little things here and there, because this has been all over social media, that it's Rick versus Negan.
Yes, and I was further ahead in the comic than I was the show. So the show's generally kept to the broad arcs of the comic. So I'm assuming that it's generally kept with that as well. You know, Rick versus Negan and the two groups coming at one another. And I'm guessing, though I don't know for sure, that it resolves in a somewhat similar manner. I guess I'll find out.
I know, it's kind of hard to ask you whose side are you on, being that you're not all caught up. But you know who Negan is. You get a sense of what kind of group. So I guess without seeing it and without being caught up, Team Rick or Team Negan?
Oh, well, I mean, you've got to be Team Rick. Even though I think Rick has gone far off the deep end and is perhaps not the heroic figure that he was in the first few seasons, I think you can understand how he got to that point. Whereas Negan, as charismatic a character as he is, as interesting as he is, as much as you're engrossed in him when he's on screen or on the page for anyone who has read the comic, he's not someone you necessarily have empathy for. At least not me.
He's a big fan among the ladies, though. That's, I think, one strength he's got going for him.
That is understandable. They did a great job casting him.
Yes.
I mean, the guy when he's on screen, he's magnetic. I can't deny that.
All right. So you actually are going to be making an appearance to discuss the book because the series is coming up. Tell me a little bit about that.
Going to be at the Ocean County Library.
I believe it's October. So it's Ocean County Library, October 12th at 7 p.m. What can people who attend expect? What kind of things? How deep into it are you going to go?
I think we're going to talk. We're going to talk about the origins of the zombie genre. We're going to talk about where The Walking Dead came from, both its roots in film as well as its roots as a comic book, and then we're going to dive into some of those themes of those initial seasons, and we're going to talk a little bit about what makes those initial seasons tick, why they were special, and how the show managed to go from being a cult hit to a show that's probably a lot smarter than a lot of critics give it credit for. And then, obviously we'll do some Q&A and take some questions, and I'll have, fans completely stump me on some things, which I'm sure will happen.
I'm sure it will happen because you're not all caught up.
That's true.
So how do you stay completely in the dark? I mean, it's all over social media. You have to have some idea of things that happen, especially if it's something major. I actually... part of my job is working on social media. I do that for a living, so I've become really good at putting on the blinders and just completely skimming over things. There's quite a few shows that I watch the same way. Game of Thrones, for instance, I wait until each season is over and then I watch the season as a whole, and I've managed to never been spoiled with anything. Wow.
So that somehow I managed to make that work. I'm sure, knock on wood, I'll get, it'll happen at some point, but, I've been fairly lucky so far. And I know when, you can sometimes see when there's buzz on social media, you can see hashtags trending or people posting articles, and that's when you know what, I think I should stay off Facebook for a couple days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And, I'd never worry about being off Facebook for a couple of days. It's always nice to have a break.
You're one of the very few people I've ever heard that has said that a show has not been destroyed for them by social media. So unless if you have any other comments, I'm going to close it up with the question. If you could bring back one of the characters that has already been killed off, who would you bring back?
Ooh, that is a really good question. Boy, you know what? I would say probably Tyrese. I found...
Tyrese?
Yes. There's I don't know if it's the actor on the show. I don't know if it's because there's a nostalgic fondness for him from the comic, because he was a terrific character in the comic. But I liked his inner struggle. I liked the idea that he was battling the same sort of demons that Rick was battling, but I think he sort of felt as if he was losing that battle, and unlike Rick, he wasn't okay with losing that battle. And I liked that. There was something I felt really compelling about that, and I sort of wanted to see his struggle continue, despite the fact that his death episode was one of the best of the show, I think.
I am so surprised by your answer. So many people would say Glenn, maybe a few would say Lori, But you say Tyrese, so
Yeah,
very interesting.
I mean, Glenn and Lori, both interesting characters. Herschel, wonderful character. His youngest daughter, wonderful. All great characters, but I think Tyrese, there was a little richness under the surface that some of the other characters didn't necessarily have.
Fair enough. Okay, so Dissecting the Walking Dead by Eric San Juan. Where can people get this?
You can find that on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and most online booksellers.
All right, beautiful. Slicing into the guts of today's hottest show, Dissecting the Walking Dead by Eric San Juan. He's going to be at the Ocean County Library, October 12th at 7 p.m. And if you want any more information on anything else that he's written, produced, ericsanjuan.com. Walking Dead will be coming back October 22nd, 9 p.m. on AMC. See you then.